All right, so I want to go over today the next steps of the drone. Once you have the model built, what you're doing after you have that done. Just for a timeline, we have all of this week. We're here Monday of next week, and then we have 2 weeks. The Monday before we're done, we'll do a final exam. So you'll come in, I'll give you an assignment to model, texture, light, render out, and then that'll be the exam. And then the last assignment after the drone is just a demo reel, which is like a quick half-hour, put all your pieces into After Effects and make a movie of it, okay? So the drone and the demo reel are due on the 11th of December. That's our last day of class, okay? So just time-wise, keep in mind how long things take to render before. For, obviously the drone, we'll be doing a still image, a high-res still, and we'll be doing a video of this too. So let me save this as drone 2. All right, then open it up from there. I thought I had it not saved, whatever. All right, so my first step after I'm done modeling my stuff is to go through and start building materials that I'm just going to apply. So I have just random colors that I've chosen here, nothing specific to anything, it doesn't matter. They're just colors, that's all it is. And I've gone through and dropped them onto different items that are inside of my object area here. So you'll see my drone has the red color, here's my motors. And if I shrink everything down so you can see exactly what's inside each group, this, okay, there we go. I have my blade guards, that's one item here. I have this, which is actually like the inside wiring. So I have some wires that are on the inside of this. I have this center spiral, which is this thing in the middle. I have a cloner for the propellers. I have the little peg right there. I have my propeller cap, and then I have the little cylinder that would be out here, which would be the motor housing. Okay, so all I did was make new materials, drop them onto each one of those items. Anything that I plan on going into Keyshot with and having a separate material, separate texture, I want to separate it here. It'll just make my job a lot easier when I get over there. Especially when I look at something like these coils on the inside. All this is just a cylinder, or not a cylinder, but a torus that I divided and had to duplicate all the way around. That's all that is. Okay, so if I were to take that in there and decided I want those to be different colors, I would have to grab each one of those pieces and then assign it. That would just take forever to do. Okay, now part of the animation we're going to do inside of here, part of the animation I'm going to do inside of Keyshot. Just so we can see what's going to happen when we go into Keyshot, I'm just going to save this exactly as it is. This will allow me to bring my drone right into Keyshot. There it goes. I must have clicked on a video. There we go. So I'm just going to go to import. I'm going to go find my drone, which is here, there, drone, scenes, and that's my latest one. Now, when we get this, we'll typically get something like this. File version may be unsupported, blah, blah, blah. In order to, for Cinema 4D to import, you must use save project for Melange. So we'll try that. File, save project for Melange. Sarcona, drone to Keyshot. Now it's important to understand that going from one software to another software, usually there's some sort of interpretation that has to happen. Back in the day before it allowed us to bring Cinema 4D files right into this, we would actually have to export it out as a separate format as a OBJ or a FBX, and then it would let us bring it in. So same settings. Let's see what it gives us. There we go. So it brought it in. Some things that I'm looking for, I want to make sure that everything is still nice and smooth. I'm going to turn my image back to wider, so I'm going to go 600 here. Let's go 800. There we go. So So I'm just clicking and dragging, spinning around, trying to take a look at it. As I go into this, this is now going super slow. Okay, the blades were pretty crisp, but they did have some nice rounding on them. I believe that we have translated that information. Everything is nice and rounded as it should be. Okay. Now, something that I'm going to run into, eventually we want the blades to spin independently. So if I go to my scene and I start opening up my items here, when I get down to, oops, I turned that off. When I get down to my propellers, which should be somewhere in here, number one, you can tell the naming is pretty horrible. We can't really see what anything is named, because it just says symmetry, symmetry, symmetry. This is my propeller right there. And if I were to try to rotate this, okay, number one, it doesn't look like it's even rotating at all. Is it going to scale? Nothing's working, right? So this is just, it's everything that's just locked in. Oh, it's not even them, that's why. Huh. Let me verify which one it was. Propeller cap, I thought it was that. All right, I'm going to pause this there. Now I can go back here. All right, that is it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that cloner, which is right there. And we just can't do anything with it. Okay, no matter what number I type here, nothing happens at all. All right, so this is one of the things that we have to fix up our drone before we bring it into there. So we can't just bring it in exactly like this. We have to do some cleanup here and get rid of a lot of these things like that, because it is keeping the symmetry. It's basically, as it brought it in, is bringing in as one big chunk like that. Now, if we had a product that's not going to be animated, no big deal. We could do this. We could just take the model as is, bring it in, texture it, and not have to worry about going through and getting rid of all these symmetries and whatever else. But as it stands, we can't. We need to have those things separated. So I'm just going to go to new here so it doesn't try to update. I'll hit pause. And then I'm going to start going through and cleaning up this stuff and separating all these things so that it goes a lot easier into that. So anything that has not the triangle shape here, okay, so this is an object, this is an actual polygon object. If I want to grab faces, I can grab the faces and move them around. Oops. Those are fine. This is fine. This one is not because it's a shape, so I need to hit C on it so that it now becomes an actual shape that is part of it. When I go to this cloner, this is my propeller blades, so I'm going to click on that and hit C as well. So now I have in here 6 propeller blades. I'll have to clean that up, so I'm just going to Alt-G this and call this Propeller Blade 00. Okay, that's my cloner. Here's my center spiral, which is inside here, which is that thing. I'm going to hit C on that as well. That kept the name good. I'm going to go into my wires here, hit C on those, hit C on these, and again, you'll see all the different ones I have. So I'm just going to grab these 2 groups, group them together, and call these wires. All right, my blade guards are good. That has a triangle next to it. Nothing, okay. Now I get to a symmetry. I have to hit C on the symmetry to make sure that I have actually separate pieces for each one of these. Now when I hit C on the symmetry, you'll notice that I don't get a new piece right here. I'll go to this one and do the same thing, hit C again, and I still don't get another new piece. What happens is anytime you use the symmetry and you hit C on it, it makes it into a separate shape, or it makes a symmetry locked off, but it doesn't actually make a shape right here. So we have to tell it to do that, okay? So there are some pieces that will spin around for a while and some pieces that will not. So like my propeller cap will spin. My motor peg, which is underneath this right here, that will spin. And then my propellers themselves will also be spinning. So these 3 items here when I go to animate it, I should be able to grab this and rotate it and have just the propeller spin. Obviously right now I'm getting all the propellers spinning around together. So I'm going to go to the propeller blades, go to objects, and I'm going to say current state to object. Yes. No, I lied. I'm not going to that. I'm going to mesh, conversion. Oops, I have to grab the pieces. There we go. Grab the pieces, mesh, conversion, and then polygon groups to objects. Okay, so once I do this, it'll actually separate all the blades. And so now each one of these is a grouping of the blades. Okay, so I'm going to go and just solo this. Hierarchy, there we go. And then I'm going to grab all the pieces, and I'm just going to group that into one group. So that'll be propeller 1. I'll do the same thing here. Grab all those pieces, group it. That'll be prop 2. Group these. Now you could do this over here. It's just a lot easier to just select it there and then group it. And then if I go here, you'll see that these still exist as something. I'm just going to delete those. I don't need those anymore. Now I have basically one group for each one of those propellers. I need to do the same thing for the motor peg, the propeller cap as well. So I'm going to grab both of these, conversion, and then polygroups to objects. And then now I have one for each of these. Okay. Now let me turn my solo off. I'm going to select one of these pegs and just lift it up. Okay, so this is the first one, so I'm just going to drop this into the propeller 1 group. There we go. I'm going to go to number 2, drop this into number 2. Go to number 3, drop that into number 3. And then I'll just double check that I grouped them correctly, which I know I didn't. You can see this one's peg is part of that. I need to fix that. So we'll just swap these pegs here. And swap that peg there. So now that we have all these symmetries, we're just going back and cleaning up all this extra work. So that everything is separate. And then 3 should be up there. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Propeller caps right here. So we'll do the same thing. So 1 should be in 1. 2 will be in 2. 3 will be in 4, apparently. And 4 will be in 3. Okay, so I don't need the caps or the peg anymore, so I can delete those. All right, so that should be it as far as those pieces moving. Okay, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hit C on there. Oops, once I turn it on. I'm going to hit C. Now before I do that, note here these numbers on this subdivision. So this is what's making all the pieces look nice and smooth. Right now we're seeing this as a 2 subdivision. When we hit C though, it's actually going to go to 3 subdivisions. So I always want to preview it to see what it's going to look like before I do that. So that looks pretty good. I'm just double checking, making sure I don't have anything weird happening. Some of these pieces, maybe I don't want that subdivision to even happen. So like these, I guess it's not a huge deal if those do it. All right, so I'm going to hit C on there. Now be aware that that number, if I were to put it up to 5 or 6 or 7, it's going to subdivide it that many more times, and it's going to really slow down my machine. This file, as it stands, is about a couple hundred kilobytes. Once I save this version, it might be a few megabytes. If I did a huge subdivision here, it might be a gigabyte. That's how big it would be, and it would be very slow to work with. So this part is all set. The blade guards can be separate. That's no big deal because they're not actually moving. The wires can be part of their own thing because they're not actually moving. The center spirals aren't really moving. The motor housings aren't moving, so those are all good. I do want to just organize this a bit better, so I'm just going to start pulling things out of these groups. So I don't have all these nulls and symmetries and whatever else is. Okay, so now this should be empty. Yep, nothing's there, so I'll delete that. And then I'm just going to group all this and call this prop items. That way I have prop items, and I have motor housing, propeller blades, center spiral, which is that thing. I have my wires, which are these things. I have my blade guards, which are those things. Okay, there we go. And then inside each one of these, I have a propeller group that I could then go through and animate. Okay. So now I'm going to go up to the body of the ship, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go to this one, make sure it's a triangle, which it is. Go up to my symmetry, hit C. Go up to the next symmetry, hit C. These should be joining all of those together. If my symmetry was set up right, as it's symmetried, it should be connecting all those edges. So I should have nice, clean geometry on here. Okay, so I shouldn't see any weird seams, which I am seeing right there. I want to get rid of that. So before I even go to this and turn that on, I want to get rid of that extra seam. So I'm going to go to my edges, go here, and there's just too many divisions right down the middle. So I'm just going to delete these few divisions. So I'm just going to grab those and dissolve it. And now when I put my subdivision back on, it should create a nice smooth transition right there. That looks good. So then I'll grab that subdivision, I'll hit C on that. And so now this cube is all smoothed out. Now at this point, I can pull it out of this group. I don't know what this subdivision is, I'll just delete that. I can delete this group. And I can call this drone body. And then if I decided I want to put any more detail, I can do it at this stage. So I mentioned before there might be some times where you want to put in some extra cut lines, maybe some lights or something. This is the point where we could do that. So if I go into here and I just grab some faces, let's say the battery is going to go about here. So I'm just going to grab this area, try to keep it symmetrical. It looks pretty symmetrical. I'm going to go to my extrude inner and just extrude this inward a little bit. Then I'll extrude it regular and just extrude this in. Make sure caps are turned off. There we go. And then I'll do another extrude inner. Then I'll do another extrude out. There we go. And so now I've created just this little cut line right there that when we render it out, it'll look like there's a spot for the battery to kind of inject itself into. If I wanted some lights on here, I could do the same thing. I could go to faces. You want to find something square. Like these ones, if I start extruding, it'll be like an oblong shape. But if I grab something like this, it'll be more square and more like realistic looking. So I'll grab these two pieces here. I'll extrude it inward, extrude it in like that. There we go. And I could even add another subdivision on top of this, and that will help smooth out those circles. Okay. Now before I do that, I'm going to jump back to this. I'm going to grab some of these points right here. Actually, I'll grab the edges. And I'm just going to nudge these edges over just so it is more square. There we go. So that feels more square. I'll do the same thing on this side. There we go. So now when I do this, then it becomes perfectly round. Okay. Now I could do the same thing on the other side as well if I wanted to. Definitely an option. I could go into, let's say, the arms even and add, some details here. So let me turn off this subdivision, grab some of these arms pieces, deselect that. There we go. So I could add a little cut line right there if I wanted to, and then when this gets on, then I'll have this rounded piece, just a nice little detail that would add on top of that. I can also make a sphere for these lights. Oops. Come on, just scooch over there, and there we go. And the idea with that is that even though we've smoothed it, we can still add more detail to the shape of it. So if I'm adding little light bulbs to this, this is how I can do that. Not sure why it keeps it snapping on. Snapping is not on. It's just jumping all of a sudden. Might be just so small that it's just doing that. Or it's just being stupid. That could be it. Let's go here. Let's go to radius, and we'll just punch it down there. There we go. Good. And then because this is a sphere and it has the shape of it, I need to hit C so it goes to that triangle. And then I can duplicate that over there. And because these are new objects, I'm going to make a new material down here. It just has to have a different material. So I'm giving it specific colors. That doesn't matter. So I'm just dropping these on those there. My drone body needs to have that material. Okay, my propeller blades lost there, so I'm just going to go to my propeller blades, which are here, and drop the propeller material on top of that. Two on that one. And again, this kind of maintenance part of this just makes your life a lot easier when you get into Keyshot. You'll see I'm just dragging it right onto the objects in the scene, and it assigns it to all of them. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I think everything has its material assigned. That should be good right there. Okay, so I'm going to click on the drone body again. I'm going to set this to 2 and 2, hit C again, pull the drone body out of the group, delete the group. Okay, I'm just going to grab both of these lights and just group them, call them lights. And then I'm just going to take everything and just make one big group for drone. Okay, that way I have one item I can lift up, move around, whatever I need to. One spot. Now I need to check each blade to make sure that they do spin correctly. So I'm going to go into each blade. And I know this one works because this was the one that I started with. So what I'm doing is I'm double checking how it moves. I want to make sure that there's no wobble to it, that it does spin perfectly around. So I'm going to go to the top view, and this is easiest to see here, is as I drag this around, I should not see any wobble. If I do see a wobble, then I need to fix it. If there's a wobble, it'll look like this. I'm going to just move this pivot off of this just a little bit. And then I'm going to go to rotate, and then, oops, make sure my, there we go. So there's a wobble. You can definitely tell that the blade is not perfectly centered. That will come out inside of Keyshot, and it won't look right. Okay? Now I know my other ones are not lined up right, because as I duplicated this and moved those things around, the pivot stayed in the same spot. So you'll see pivot, prop 2, 3, and 4, their pivot is still right there. So I need to move those. So I'm going to hit L or click this, switch to my move tool. I'm going to hit W to switch to the world translation so it goes straight over. And then I'm just going to slide it over here. We should have an exact spot of where this is going to spin. The middle of that point is where I kind of locked all my props to, all my motor stuff. So as long as I move this arrow right to the center of there, I should be good. I can even turn on my snapping and lock it right in. Oops, try it again. There we go. Okay, so that's locked right in. Then I'm going to go to number 3 and do the same thing. Just slide this over. And when your file gets, this many divisions, you can see how many lines are there. It's going to go a bit slower. So you won't get instant feedback. You just have to be patient with it. There we go. And then just double check, make sure it's locked in. Good. I'll go to number 4 and do the same thing. And again, this is all stuff that you want to check before you get into Keyshot, because in Keyshot you have limited options as far as what you can do for these kinds of things. For moving a pivot, it's basically like, where do you want the pivot? Pick from this list. And it's not a, putting it exactly in the spot. Turn the pivot off, switch back to this. Go back to my rotate, double check. There it goes. All right, so that is rotating perfect. Now I do want to fix something else on here too. So all my blades right now, I believe, oh, never mind. Is that right? Yeah, I just want to make sure they were facing different directions. Yep, that's good. Okay. So everything should be good right here. So everything has materials on it. Everything is labeled. I can save this again. And now I shouldn't need to do that save as melange. Sometimes it wants it, but I should be able to just import it straight as the file that I was working on, which is just drone 2. And here you can see the file size. It used to be this big, 600 kilobytes, and now it's this big, 200 megabytes. Because every time we hit that C and we start expanding on it, it's just adding more divisions. So now I can just hit import. It should bring everything in, nice and organized. And this is still testing. I still have to do some work in Cinema before I bring this actually in. I just want to make sure that part at least came in. Okay, so there's my lights, there's my prop items. I'm going to check my propellers. So I'm just going to grab one of the propellers. Oops, don't use that. And, come on. I'm going to just go to the Move tool, turn off Translate so I can just rotate, and just rotate it around. And it looks like it's rotating good. Maybe it's off a little bit. Something's going on there. I think it's just delayed in updating because the pivot looks like it's in the right spot. Nope, it might be off a little bit there. I'll have to check that when I get back. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to New just to close it out. My system's screaming. Pause it again. Back to here. Okay. So I'm just going to double check that Propeller 1. Yeah, that is in the right spot. I don't know why it thinks it's rotated. Oh, I do have a rotation on there. Maybe that was why. So I'm just going to reset all my rotates in here just to make sure that they're all back to 0. All right, that should be good. Okay. Now, before I get into Keyshot, I just want to do my base animation. So the way that this is going to happen is this is going to be a 10-second animation. The drone will be sitting on the ground. It will spin the blades for 2 seconds and then gradually pick up and then fly away. Okay? We're going to do the blade spinning inside Keyshot. We're going to do the drone lifting off inside of Cinema. So I'm going to just put my pivot into a more friendly spot. This is kind of like a weird spot. It's like not centered. It's like off center. So let me just slide this to the center of here. There we go. And I'm just going to drag it down to about there. That seems like a good spot. Kind of the center of the body is where I'm putting it. And then it looks like in the top view I should also slide it over this way. And that just has to do again with where I created it and symmetry and all that stuff. All right, so I turned off my pivot tool, so now I should be good. So I need to create 2 seconds inside here where the drone is sitting there. So 60 is where my animation is going to start. I'm going to set some keyframes for position, set some keyframes for rotation. This is going to be 10 seconds, so I'm going to go up to 300 frames. Sorry, 240 frames, we're going to do this at 24. I'm going to go up to, let's say, 160. Let's say 120. I'm just going to lift it up a little bit here and then set a keyframe for all of these. Then I'll go up to 240. And I'll raise it up a little bit more, maybe move it over some, and then give it some rotate. Okay, so I have 3 keyframes right now, one at 60 saying stay here, one at 120 saying lift off the ground, and then one at 240 that's way over there. Now I'm going to go in between these and just give it a little bit of a rock to it so it doesn't feel like it's just naturally kind of sliding up. So it's not perfect. So you'll see how I'm just giving it a little bit of rotation as it moves up and then setting some keyframes. So now it feels like it's lifting off the ground, like there's a little bit of weight to it. There we go. And then I'll even go here and maybe just rotate it just a smidge in the other direction, just so again we get this kind of rocking look to it. There we go. Okay, we don't want a whole lot of movement. Our camera wants to be pretty close to it. So if we have the thing fly way up, our camera is not going to move. So we're going to have to be way back here if the drone were to fly way up there. So I only moved it a little bit so I can be pretty close to this as it lifts off the ground and starts to fly away. Okay, so that's pretty good. I just need to adjust one of my keyframes here. So starting off, we probably will have a little bit of ease where it slowly moves up. And then these ones here should be pretty steady as to how they move through those. But then this one at the end, I don't want to like slow down, which is what it's doing. It's slowing down before it hits that point. So I'm going to right-click Animation and then go to the F-curve. And we can see that here. At the beginning, it's nice and smooth. It's starting up kind of slower. And then keeping its speed. And then right at the end, it's actually like slowing down again. So I need to grab these keyframes at the end. There we go. And then I'm just going to hit this. Oops, not that. I'm going to hit this, I guess, and just straighten that out. There we go. I'm going to do these one at a time. I thought that would have done it, wouldn't it? Key, linear, that's what it should have done. Why didn't it do that? Oops. Let's try that again. Let's grab those. Linear, yes, that should have worked. Apparently not. I was just doing one at a time. So I'm just going to grab one of these and then just make sure that this flows straight like that. Okay, so there's no easing to it. It's just flowing. Click the point, drag the arrow so it points right at that one. Do the same thing here. Frame all. The hardest thing is remembering all these hotkeys from every single one of these other programs. There we go. That one. That one. And that one. Okay, so now they're all pretty straight. So I'm going to preview the animation again just to make sure. There we go. Okay, so that works. So now I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to jump back to Keyshot, and I'm going to import. Drone 2, that's my latest one. Hit open. Everything else should be good. And you'll see all the stuff that it has to import to make all this work. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to click on my drone, hit snap to ground. There we go, so now it's on the ground. And if I open up the animation area, I should see nothing happening right here, and then the drone taking off. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to hit play. So nothing happens, and then the drone takes off. So I've transferred that animation into here. And you can see, this is why I need to make sure I know where this drone is going. Where'd it go? Yeah, I zoomed in, because the things are backwards. There we go. So now as we go here, he's going to go about that high. Okay, so all I'm doing here is just kind of lining it up to make sure that my cameras make sense. Right, it can cut out at the end, but I just don't want it to be there at the beginning. That's good. And then I'm going to do the animation for each one of the propellers. And then that's where I'm going to end today's lecture. And then another lecture, I'll go over some of the materials for it. Propeller blade, propeller, propeller. There we go. So the way that animation works inside Keyshot, and this is why we did that other part inside of Cinema, is because you right-click, you go to animation, and then you go to which one you want to happen. And it's basically like starting point, ending point. There's not a lot of graph work we can even do inside here. Okay. So I'm going to go to rotation, which is what the propellers should do. And then here is that animation. So I drag this to where I want to start. I drag this to where I want to end. Okay, so I don't want it to end right at 2. I want it to continuously spin throughout the entire animation. Under rotation, this is how many degrees I want to rotate. So if I were to look at this now, it's going to rotate 90 degrees from 0 all the way to 8 seconds. So, and this should actually be 24 here. Let's set that to 24. There we go. And this I'm going to stretch out to 240. There we go. And then that should be at 240 as well. Okay. So I'm going to have this spin around like crazy, like even more than you think you probably need. That's how much you want. That's probably too much. I'm going to do 120,000. We'll see what that looks like. So if we rewind this and hit play, that's going to go 120,000. So it's obviously going in the wrong direction. That doesn't make sense. So I choose which direction. I choose Y. There we go. And then I hit play again, and then I watch it. Now you can see there still is a little wobble. Somehow it didn't translate correctly the pivot from one to the other. So if I go into the pivot settings here, I can say pivot point object axis and see if that works. No, we're still getting a little wobble there. All right, so I'm going to use pick, and sometimes you have to use this. Sometimes it doesn't transfer the information over. So I know that my cap is the perfectly centered item. If the cap is centered, then everything else should be good. So if I say pick, I can open up this, open up my propeller, open up the propeller cap. There it is. Okay, and so now down here, the propeller cap.1, which is that guy, is what it's going to pivot around. So I'll rewind it again, I'll hit play, and now it's spinning perfectly around that center point. And there it goes. Now, this is what is neat about this too, is that once you have an animation, you can just copy it, and then I can go to Propeller 2, and then paste the animation. And then go to Propeller 3, and then paste the animation. Okay, so now if I hit play, it does that, because they're still linked to the other one's thing, propeller cap.1. So I just need to change the name here to whatever it is. I don't think I can type it in. No, I have to click it again. So pick. This one is in number 4, cap there. The same thing here, click that. Oops. Pick. And this one is number 3. This is that one. Click this one, scroll down, click pick, go to 2, click that one, hit OK. All right, so now if I hit OK and hit play, everything's spinning correctly. Cool. Now the last thing I want to change as far as the animation goes is the blades should spin the opposite direction. Okay, so like this blade here would spin counterclockwise, this one should spin clockwise, because otherwise it would not work, I guess. So I can see that this one is spinning clockwise. I need to flip that one. This one and this one are typically going to spin the same way, and then these two opposite ones are going to spin the same way. So all I do, click on that rotation, and just make the degrees negative. And that's what's nice about how this is set up inside of Keyshot, is that it's very simple to change the animation once we have it going. There we go. Now I'm going to change one more thing on these, which is how it starts. Okay, so if I go to my time settings here, the motion right now is linear, meaning that the second it starts playing, it's going to play at the same exact speed throughout the entire animation. Well, I'm going to have this ease into it, so it'll gradually pick up speed for each one of the propellers. So click that one, go down here to ease in. And had I copied it and pasted it, that would have gone too, but it's very simple to just go through and grab these and change that right there. Okay, so now we have our drone. It's moving from Cinema and it's moving from Keyshot. And then if you get done with that part and you want to start doing the materials, feel free to go through and just start customizing the materials for these. Like I've shown before, it's pretty simple to do. If I start off with the drone body, which is there, I'm going to pick a different color. I don't want this to be, or a different kind of material. I don't want this to be just diffuse. I want this to be a plastic, so I'll pick plastic. And now you'll see that it has a highlight on here. There you go. And if I want to change the color of it, I can just click there, pick a different color, hit OK, and now it's that color. And I would do the same thing for all my other items. Here's my propeller. Give this a plastic look. Maybe I'll make these kind of a grayish color. If I don't like how much shine is on there, I can play with the roughness. So that will smooth it out. It'll still give some shine, but that shininess is now spread out some. Yeah, my computer is going really slow. It's going to work a bit faster on yours. There's the motor housing, so maybe this one would be, you know, maybe a metal. And let's pick just a dark color for this. There we go. Okay, so you get the idea. It's just kind of going through, picking these things. You could also drag from here. So if you found a material inside this area that you really liked, like here's paint, I could just drag this. And because these have the same color on each one of these parts, it'll automatically override whatever color was there. So another reason why we did it the way we did it is because it automatically groups those colors together. Still thinking, still thinking. Now I'm going to go to this side here where I have the lights. And there is a light in this area. If I go to light, and I go to emissive, and then I drag this onto my lights right there. And then double click it so I can select it. And then those are my lights. So if I give those visible in camera, visible in shadows if I want that to be visible. I could also crank this up to, you know, crazy numbers. And we may not really see it right now because nothing's really close to it, but typically you will get some sort of color bleed. Hey, where'd my lights, where'd my camera go? Oops. I hit F, which is not frame. Scene. Right click, and then frame. Where are you at? Where'd you go? It's just disappeared. Let's make sure everything is shown, so show all parts. Go. And move. I don't know where he went. There he is. So I must have been really zoomed in or zoomed out or something. There he goes. Cool. All right, so let me see if we can see anything with those yet. No. And then if you get more advanced into Keyshot, you can do a whole lot of stuff with it. Obviously, this is one assignment, so we're not going to get too crazy on it. There you go. Okay, so once you have that, then you're ready to start doing the textures, which will be things you'll bring in from Illustrator. Okay, so in the past assignment, in the product one, we laid out UVs, and then we wrapped our texture around those UVs. In Keyshot, we can actually create pieces like this that we will then project onto our model and lock them in there. So a good thing to kind of build, and this is something you could do kind of on your spare time, you're just watching TV or whatever, you're just kind of building just random shapes that you might want on there. So this is basically a decal sheet. If you remember, like the old model cars would come with these sticker sheets, you'd peel them off and stick them on. That's all this is. And these are just options for me. when I do the actual texturing, maybe I'll do it next class, just so we have it. I basically am just going to go through and pick things that I want. So I may grab this one and use that to stick it onto the side of this right here. Like I want that there. I may want to have the name, and here's different versions of the name that I may want to use. I want to stick that somewhere on my drone as well. I have some different wires, different symbols, different icons. Here's the battery, so I can stick that on the battery side of this, which is, I believe, right here. Yep, you can see the line coming through. Okay, so I have basically this sticker sheet, so you'll need to have some sort of logo pack that you'll use. Doesn't have to be full like this. You could just have 4 or 5 different things. My other one that I have, did I have it in here? No, I don't. I made it in Photoshop. But either way, you just make a new document. Doesn't matter the size, because you can always resize these inside Illustrator. When we bring them into Keyshot, I'll go through that. But these are just random shapes. And if you go to Pinterest, you look up label sheet, you'll see like millions of these kinds of things all over the place. Notice I'm playing with different colors, different fonts, different looks of things. These ones just didn't come in. Okay, so when I go over the rest of the texturing part, I'll show how we can drop these right on top of the model without having to worry about any UV layout type stuff. Cool, questions yet? No? All right, if you save your stuff in Keyshot, just hit regular save. You don't need to save package. As long as you keep your stuff together, you're good. 10, oops, drone, scene. Sarcona, drone, Keyshot. All right, cool. I'll let you continue working on your stuff. Probably next class I'll go over the texturing part just to finish wrapping this up in case you want to do this over break and you get a chance to render it out. Cool? Cool.